In this video, my fairings are already removed, all the plastic work. See description below for that video, but you don't need to remove all the plastic work of your bike to remove your forks. Removing the screen itself can help give you a bit of access and probably not scratch your screen, but you can do it with all the fairings in place. Okay, slightly weeping fork seal. So we need to take the forks out, and I'm going to get someone else to change the seals. So, mudguard, braided line so we don't have the original extra mudguard clips there. Brake calipers, another screw from the mudguard, brake calipers. Do not undo these two pinch bolts because these two hold what that threads into, the other part of the spindle. I'll leave those two done up. Top yoke both sides, bars both sides, that one, and then if we go down, let's look at this side. Two more on here, same obviously over there. Loosen those off. So mudguard off, calipers off, wheel out, forks down and out. If you haven't got a front paddock stand that doesn't go under the forks, because that's not going to help you, then block of wood. I'd rather take the fairing off, but you can do this with a fairing on. Block of wood under all of those downpipes and a car trolley jack while it's securely on the rear paddock stand. Now I like to use hand tools. Use whatever tools you like. If you loosen these two brackets, you can get those air ducts out the way and get your socket set in there, or just using a spanner by hand. Again, if there's any weird huffing puffing noise, I've got a dog sitting next to me snoring right now while I do this voiceover. But for sure, anything that you deem in the way, move it out the way or work around it. And again, use the tools you prefer to use. I like hand tools. So we're going to loosen off the bolts holding that front fender on, the front mudguard. We can then loosen off the bolts for the calipers, the two bolts on your calipers. We can even loosen off the left hand, or rather as you're on the bike, the right hand side pinch bolts. And we can do this while the front wheel's on the ground, so we're not wobbling things around. We've got a bit of sort of force we can use. We can loosen things off, except all the fork bolts, before we even jack up the front end of the bike. Now remember, these bikes are old now. This front fork removal's pretty similar for many bikes, but for this era of Gsxr, there we go, we've snapped off one of the bolts that holds the front mudguard on, snapped off, the rest of it's left in the threaded part of the fork. Very annoying, very typical of working on any vehicles that are sort of 20 to 25 years old for sure. We'll rectify that later on. We're gonna have to drill that sucker out and make good as best we can. Now a side note to this front fender removal, front mudguard removal, if it didn't come out as easy for you, mine's got a carbon fibre mudguard. If yours is a struggle to get out, leave it undone till you get your wheel out, and then it'll come out a lot easier. Now if those two bolts holding in your brake calipers are done up really tight by the previous person, you'll be glad you haven't jacked the front end of the bike up just yet. We've still got something firm to work with as we crack those bolts off there for sure. Ironically, I've just broke the ratchet that is actually 25 years old, the same age as the bike, so it's done pretty well. Time to get on Amazon and order a new set of ratchets. So muckling along as best we can now with a ratchet that doesn't ratchet. We're going to loosen off the two pinch bolts on the right hand side of the bike as we ride the bike. The left as we're working on it, but they're the right hand side pinch bolts. We're going to loosen those pinch bolts off. There's no need to remove them, just properly loosen them off, and that'll free up the spindle so you can then crack that off and remove that. Remember, the left hand side pinch bolts need to be left done up tight. The right hand side as we're looking at it, but the left hand pinch bolts of the bike. Okay, so again, I'm using hand tools, and again, my bike's already stripped down of all the fairings, so I've got quite easy access. I'm using a ring spanner, you can use a socket set, use what you like or what you can get in. Remember, you can do this with the fairings on. For me, the bike's been stripped down anyway, and of course it's much easier to get at everything if you want to remove the front end. Fully understand that you don't want that extra work, so just a bit more fiddly. You can get your hands in there, you can get your tools in there. One thing to notice now, I'm removing a bit more. I'm taking those air ducts off right out of my way. Again, you don't need to do that. At this point, the bike has still got its front wheel on the ground, and I'm going to undo most of those pinch bolts on those triple clamps, handlebars, everything, except for probably one that's done up tight each side. That means, again, we're working on something sturdy, not wobbly, until the last minute when we can lift that front end up, crack off the last bolts and slide those forks out. Remember as well, of course, when you're undoing these pinch bolts, we don't need to fully remove them, just loosen them. So to recap, we're loosening the bolt on the handlebar, we're loosening the bolts on the upper triple clamp, and we're loosening the bolts on the lower triple clamp. But because we haven't jacked the front end up yet, we're leaving a bolt either side that's easily accessible, done up tight until we jack that front end up. Now you remove those two brake caliper bolts, put them somewhere safe, slide your brake calipers off the disc, and don't leave them dangling. Just use a little bungee strap or anything, a bit of wire. Just hook them out of your way somewhere, but also so you're not putting strain on the unions and such like of your brake hoses. Don't just leave them dangling. Support that brake line for sure. If it's on a rear paddock stand, don't just jack it up and leave it, or rather ignore it. Make sure that jack's in the right place and it's not tipping. I had to lower this down, move the jack a bit to get a good centre of gravity so it didn't want to tip off the paddock stand. So just to reiterate again, the bikes, as you sit on it, right hand side pinch bolts and the bottom of the forks have been loosened but not removed. The left hand side pinch bolts are done up tight and left and right as we're sitting on the bike. So we've loosened them off, we've loosened off the main spindle, and we're going to now jack that front end and take the front end weight off of that bike and off of that wheel, so we can now fully remove the spindle and remove the wheel. Just make sure that jack is far enough forward and far enough left and right so the bike's balanced. Just make sure. Now, something I've not mentioned on a lot of these videos how to is sizes of socket spanners, Torx bits, Allen key bits, so on and so forth. And it's simply because on bikes and things, vehicles 20, 25 years old, people use random stuff. It might not have its original stuff. Things like the spindle bolt, yes, they're going to be the same, but I've just stopped, on the whole, mentioning these things because you just don't know what's going to really be on a lot of your bike when it comes to nuts and bolts and fastenings. So we checked the spindle, all looks good, no heavy scoring or nothing untoward, it's not rotten or rusted. Just check everything out, put it safe, slide out that wheel. Two things to note as you remove the front wheel. Don't damage the discs as you drag them out past the little spindle stub, etc. Don't let the bike wheel fall down on the disc, and record which way round the wheel actually is, so you can put it back the right way round. So now we can loosen off that one bolt we left tight on each fork. The bike's soundly jacked up at the front end, and we can just slide those forks out. And again, put them down safely. Everything's out, forks are out. This is hanging, other one's removed, bolts are there. These brake caliper bolts, I need to check, but they might need changing. So we've buggered a bolt in the carbon fibre front fender, front mudguard. One snapped off. I'm going to try and just drill that out and replace it. If not, I won't bother. I think it's okay where it is. We'll just put a cable tie pull through, drill it out and put a fairing, a plastic fastener in there. So forks are out. Make sure you orientate your wheel. So this is now going to be deep cleaned. I haven't got the tools, the patience, or the time. I just can't be bothered. Basically, I'm going to get someone take this down to the local shop, get those fork seals replaced for me. New fork coil, so they'll be all reconditioned if you like. But just make sure if you're using a trolley jack and those downpipes, your bike's not going to fall off the rear paddock stand. If you put that jack 4 inches the other side or the other side of the sump plug, you've got the wrong centre of gravity and it'll tip off the paddock stand. So make sure it's forward enough that everything's firm while it's sitting around waiting for those new parts. So the forks are back, new seals, new oil, and that offending bolt that snapped off from the mudguard, I've just gently drilled that out, and there's still some thread there. I just don't have the right bolt to put back in. So I've got some engine cleaner and a toothbrush, and I've really cleaned up the outside of the forks here. But there is a bit of corrosion where there's paint's come off of the aluminium or whatever. You know, I could touch that up. It's not too bad on this bike. Equally, the chrome tubes of the forks had got some pitting and some rust spots, which Rad Motorcycles, who's refurbished the forks, has gently sort of rubbed down as much as he can. It's not causing an issue. They do run through, a couple do run through the rubber seal, but they're okay, not leaking. So here's something you do need to check out, and that is, where were your forks through the top yoke? Did you record it? Did you take a photo? Do you remember how far those forks were pushed up through that top yoke? So let's just discuss that a little bit there. I think as standard on these 2000 to 2003 Gsxrs, the chrome tube of the fork sits flush with the top of the top yoke as standard from the factory. If you look at mine, I've pushed my forks up about 4mm higher. I think back in the day when I rode these bikes when they were newer, I used to drop the yokes down the forks or push the forks up through the yoke so that it was about 15mm proud of the top yoke. It changes the geometry of your bike where those forks are in relation to in or out, up or down through those yokes. For example, if you're going to drop the yokes down or push the forks up through the top yoke, whatever amount, but the more you push those forks up, the quicker the bike will turn. But equally, you're going to be losing some of the stability of the bike. You've changed its geometry. But I'm pretty sure I used to push those forks up about 15mm just to quicken the steering up just a little bit. I don't need that on this bike. It's probably never going on the track again, and I won't be riding on the road anything like I did 25 years ago. Now just make sure you've done up all those pinch bolts. Do them up very tight without stripping the threads, or refer to the torque settings online or in your manual. I wonder how your steering damper is after 20 to 25 years. Probably something else that needs replacing or attention for sure. Now for your bike, it might be easier to fit your front mudguard at this point prior to refitting the front wheel, or like me, you might want to fit it later on because obviously all my fairings are off. Okay, time to get that front wheel back in. Remember which way it came out. It does have a way around. If you can't find out, look at your tyre. Most bike tyres are directional. Hopefully there'll be an arrow stamped on the side somewhere pointing out which way the direction of rotation is, so you can put your wheel in the correct way around. Bit fiddly, get it lined up. It has got on these bikes, there's a little bit of a stub of a spindle, I guess, on the side where the pinch bolts have stayed done up. You can just about hook it on there. get the spindle through. I've lightly greased the spindle, get it through. It is a faff. Once it's got nice and lined up, get it spinning by hand. Don't thread it, just get it going by hand, and then tighten up as much as you can for now. We've tightened that up, but now it's going to put it off the jack, so we'll nip it up once it's back on the ground. And then, of course, tighten those guys up. So once the front wheel's lowered onto the ground, the jack's removed, just double check, tighten fully the spindle bolt and those pinch bolts, double check your yoke bolts. Just make sure everything's pinched up and done up tight as it should be, or to the torque settings they should be. Okay, time to refit the brake calipers onto the discs, onto the forks. Push those pads apart, so as you slide them over the disc, there's a pad either side, obviously, of the disc there. Wriggle that caliper and manoeuvre it into position, get the holes lined up, and then refit the 2 caliper bolts. Do them up to the torque specifications, or very tight without stripping the threads or damaging the bolt. Obviously they're brakes, they do need to be done up tight. Now you can either check out the playlist on the channel to see how to change your brake pads and calipers and so on, and clean up the calipers, or link in the description below.